The first rays of the rising sun were peeking in just over yonder, bathing the grassy hillocks of this rolling green field we've opened upon in a warm, yet soft yellow glow, and by extension, casting countless shadows of immense length upon the landscape. And what a landscape it was, with its long, overgrown grasses, its small, thin trees, leafy thickets, and that single strip of dark gray stone that dashed clean through it all, aka the road. Winding, twisting, snaking along the natural contours of the land, the road stretched on for miles in either direction, extending all the way out past the horizon line on both flanks. It was almost beautiful in some weird sense of the word, if not for what ran directly parallel to it on either side. Foliage defiled, almost beyond recognition, by a vast assortment of crushed cans, banana peels, and miscellaneous bits of waste that Crystal the rat is deftly poked at with her trash-picking stick.
"This is such a crock of orc shit!"
the elf sighed, wiping the beads of accumulated sweat from her brow and jabbing her stick into the nearest bit of trash she saw, all in one fluid motion.
"How does that scrotum-faced old bat expect me to clear out this whole freeway in a single day?"
For like the 12th time that morning, she caught herself feeling up that fingernail-sized dagger, the tiny glint of faux gold now strung in a real gold chain around her neck, tucked it gingerly back beneath the collar of her loose-fitting lavender tunic, and redoubled her focus on the arduous, insurmountable task at hand. The busy work she had been subjected to, a punishment wholly unfitting the crime she had committed. But before she could dwell on her current conundrum any further, a mighty, harmonious, and fast-approaching roar rattled her eardrums. It was a cry unlike any other she had ever heard. Raucous, riotous, rage-filled, and most unsettling of all, distinctly human. And lo, before she even had time to plug her ears, the source of that blasphemous noise came cresting over a nearby hill, just a few dozen yards from where the amateur wizard now stood. That brawling human man with the glint of purple in his eyes, the warrior who rode a goddamn lion mount like he was some kind of big shot. He barreled down the path, veered slightly, and was now headed straight for her. Instinctively, the elf dove out of the way, landing face first into a huge pile of mud as she did so, ruining her black skin-tight leggings and sleeveless tunic in the process. But despite her best efforts, was not spared entirely by that purple-eyed warrior's one-man stampede. Because as he sped off into the sunrise, both middle fingers proudly on display, he called back to her with vile, festering venom dripping from his words.
"Get off of the goddamn road, you mud-munching cunt bag!"
Physically unscathed, but emotionally scarred, covered in mud and seething with rage, Crystal Everfall stood once again. She leapt to her feet with a dexterity unheard of outside of the Tiger Woods and began wiping herself clean, only to be cast back down into the mud by the large wooden cart speeding past. Her silky, silvery rainbow hair, the double bun she had carefully braided it into, was drenched, ruined, and defiled by filth. But, from what she could gather from her prone position on the ground, the cart in question was being shoved along in pursuit of that first idiot, with 4 orcs hauling ass from outside and a 5th steering from within. So she brushed the thick sheen of mud from her now beet red countenance, and with brows lowered, teeth clenched, and plumes of steam pouring from her pointy ears, the elf did the roll back and kick up trick, just before being smacked across the face by a flying sheet of paper fluttering in the breeze. Conveniently, this was a wanted poster depicting the very idiot who had just cursed her out. 6'8", purple eyes, last seen speeding off northeast on Lionback. All the descriptors fit the bill, and Crystal's eyes lit up as she took a gander at the bounty placed on the guy's stupid head.
69,420 gold? Well, fuck this noise, I'm out of here!
She tossed her pointy stick to the ground, reached into the small satchel strung to her hip, and in moments was fully decked out. With her strength-enhancing golden gauntlets glistening in the morning sunlight, with that apple-tipped obsidian wand glowing faintly as she wrapped her fingers around its shaft, and with her plain-looking plaid scarf wrapped snug around her neck. But as soon as its neatly woven, beige-ended braids fell upon her back, lavender bolts of electricity began arcing up and crackling around her being. A knowing smile began creeping across Crystal's battered, bruised, and grime-smeared face as she lowered into a runner's crouch, flexed those hot buns and killer thighs for a second or three, and dashed off with such quickness that her lean, angular frame more closely resembled a silvery rainbow blur than anything else. A blur that soon disappeared from view as it dashed off into the sunrise, and the title card for this episode faded in from above. The real orcs of Wangtown, Fury Road, aka 2 Orc 2 Furious, aka Cruisin' Route 69, aka Dat Girl Got Me Like Whoa. How's it going, ladies and folks? My name is Chris RR Bauso, and this is my show. You're about to hear Chapter 14 of my ongoing Sword and Sorcery narrative. A story written, read, performed, and edited, all with your earholes in mind. But don't concern yourself with going back to catch up quite yet, because this episode, like every episode, just so happens to be the perfect jumping on point. And then, once you're hooked, there's plenty of backstory to check out while you wait for next week's tale to drop. So kick back, relax, and allow me to unfurl the wizard scroll. Kickstart My Heart blared from that massive, freshly pimped out wagon speakers as Gregork and the gang picked up the pace. As they ran full tilt, shoving their large, rectangular wooden cart up a muddy hill and getting some major airtime, sending splotches of mud down onto the camera lens as they soared directly overhead. The Dixie horn they just recently had installed was going buck wild as well, sounding off in a gratuitously obnoxious manner as the party hit the ground hard and sped off after their bounty once again. Sped off due northeast to where the rolling green hills of upstate New Orc soon made way for something else entirely. Gregork wheezed from his position behind the back bumper, clearly struggling to do his share of the pushing, his neck fat jiggling vigorously as he glanced around at the quickly fading greenery, at the gray, blasted tundra of lifeless trees and deformed, acid-tempered rocks that they sped toward at nearly a half mile a minute.
Guys, are you sure going after this Rah'd'ny dude was a good call? This place looks super dangerous.
Pshaw, boy, Private snapped, showing no signs of fatigue despite his advanced age.
Danger is my middle name.
Even still, he's one powerful-looking fella, especially for a human. And don't forget, he made mincemeat out of that one orc back in the Super Arena in 26 seconds flat. What's got you so convinced we'd fare much better?
You goddamn millennial orcs really do get under my wrinkled green skin. Always quitting when the going gets tough, making us honest, hard-working boom orcs pick up on your slack.
But if we follow him any much further northeast, we'd be headed straight into the...
God damn it, boy! Spit it out!
The northeastern Badlands!
Private's brows furrowed nearly halfway down the bridge of his nose as Gregork's spastic bleeding gave way to silence among the party. Silence that soon came to a bittersweet end by that jaded old Skeleton vet himself.
The fork you talking about, boy?
You know, well, the 125,000 square mile circle of tainted land right over yonder?
Doesn't ring a bell.
The place where acid rain pours down from the goddamn sky all the time?
Acid rain? Pshaw the sequel, boy. Next you're gonna tell me it was climate change that done it too, you damn taint-sniffing, orc-bomber-loving degenerate. But I said Pshaw the sequel, boy, and you do not want to let me get to the threequel either, because that's when things get messy. So shut your damn trap and keep pushing before I...
Ease up, Private. The kid's got a point. The kinder, far more sagacious Morcan Freeman interjected, quelling his lifelong friend's ranting instantly with a soft pat to the back. I trust that you recall that song by What's-His-Face that goes like, Purple rain, purple rain.
Of course, my sexy orc wife and I consummated our marriage to that very track. Why do you ask?
Oh, well, it turns out that guy's uncle had once gone out to the Badlands and stood in the rain on a dare, and almost instantly his skin and muscles melted off as he screamed, and I quote,
Oh dear God, why? TLDR, he had written the song in memoriam for that dead uncle. And I'd say we're asking for a world of trouble if we go pushing our luck much farther. Fork you, Morcan.
Eat a Dick butted in.
I'm with my boy Private on this one. 69,000 gold is 69,000 forking gold. Even split 5 ways, that's more than enough dough to bag a different broad down at Crazy Joe's every night for the rest of our natural lives. You two would really pass all that up over a little inclement weather? Good riddance, I say. Go right ahead. Leaves more gold for the rest of us real orcs. Right, Spitshine?
And from the driver's seat of the wagon, a leather-clad Spitshine stopped making fake engine noises with his mouth and instead provided a brief but heartfelt call to action. Doing so as he donned a pair of aviator shades and looked straight at the camera.
Ride, orc, die.
He snarled this with such bravado and grace in his words that the cart's wheels somehow peeled out in response. For everyone's collective resolve had just been bolstered tenfold by Spitshine's rallying cry. Their qualms quelled outright, they sped off full steam ahead, zooming after their quarry without quarrel, but instead as a single, well-lubricated unit. All thanks to that single nugget of wisdom, the wind was at their backs, the path forward was clear, and they crested the next hill at a breakneck pace. With flaming tire tracks in their wake no less, they took to the skies, just as their custom-made license plate came undone and popped off behind them. And you already know that thing spun in place on the road below and flopped over face side up, revealing the words, "The Fornicart 2, written upon it in neon green impact font. In seconds, the 4 orcs on pushing duty had gone from hauling with all their might to clinging precariously to the back bumper for dear life, clutching the wood of the wagon with fingers gone white from the exertion. As they had several times thus far, they braced for impact with the ground, flexing their abdominals and clenching their butt cheeks as tight as they could physically go, all in anticipation of gravity's inevitable, painful rebuttal. The only difference being that this time, the landing didn't quite go according to plan. Because as they soared majestically through the air, in slow motion mind you, their flawless, picturesque arc was thrown way off balance, flung into a full-on barrel roll by the speeding, silvery rainbow blur of motion that had been trailing close behind this whole time. By Chris Stahl, the motherfucking raddest, who had just taken a running leap off that rather ramp-shaped hilltop right after them. She soared into the air before landing on the wagon's hood in a cool hand plant, then vaulted herself forward with the power of 10 wood elves, coming and going with such speed as to appear as little more than an afterimage in the eyes of those unsuspecting orcs. The ones who quickly found themselves flipped upside down as the slow motion cut out abruptly, as they careened straight down to the ground below.
Whoa! Oh my God!
The cart exploded on impact with that gray, lifeless soil, leaving a flaming, smoldering pile of busted cart parts and bloody orc corpses where there'd only been some rocks and dirt but mere moments before. And upon first glance of the blackened, smoking wreckage that had just exploded a second time, anybody with eyes could tell the likelihood of walking away from a crash like that was slim. More than 50 years had passed since the thrall of bone and steel descended upon that nameless village, since they obliterated all who stood before them, enslaved those who didn't, and razed everything within a 200-mile radius with torrential, acidic rains just as an added fuck you. Though that was 50 years ago, back before Rah'dny's plunge beyond existence as it was meant to be perceived. So he knew little of what had become of this place during his prolonged absence from reality. But he rode on all the same, charging past those disheveled huts and hovels in a delirious, sleep-deprived stupor, focusing all his energy on keeping his grip upon the bare back of that tireless, ravenous cat beast. So he had failed to notice as the early afternoon sky got real dark, real quick. For as far as the eye could see, the previously clear cyan skies had been shrouded behind storm clouds so dark they'd make your mama say, "God damn it, who turned out the lights?"
Did your daddy forget to pay the Con Wiz Edison bill again? I swear to Goblin Jesus, that small dick having, cheap ass son of a lich's left tit ain't getting none of my luscious lumps till he ponies up the dough and the lights come back on. And before your mama could even finish that rant, that perilous pair of apex predators, that snarling, roaring beast and the lion he rode upon, they had both found themselves in a crumpled heap upon the cobblestone streets of that abandoned ghost town. Because after 2 straight days of hauling ass through the realm of Yergsland, after successfully evading capture with relative ease, a small pothole in the ground had become their entire undoing. For that lion, either tired of running, tired of Rah'dny's bullshit, or, most likely, a combination of the two, he had been ran ragged, worn down and growing more careless by the moment. He had stomped down with those mighty paws in exactly the wrong spot, rolling an ankle upon that lapse in the road's structural integrity, then tumbled and fell hard to the coarse, acid-laden pavement. For 20 grueling, agonizing yards, the pair ragdolled along, allowing friction to take its course, with skin scraping against stone, with the searing, intense pain that came along with it, and upon finally slowing to a stop, with a set of crushed ribs as well. As that brawling human man found himself lying flat on his back, unable to move a muscle on account of that densely packed, massive beast now bleeding out directly atop his personage. Helpless to do much of anything to alleviate the thick streams of blood now pouring from those ghastly scrapes coating its feline frame. Incapable of doing much else besides blacking out to the sounds of his ribs snapping one by one under the wounded beast's weight. And so, for the first time in a long time, Rah'dny fell silent. One fat nap later, the man, the myth, the legend, King Rah'dny of lich-slaying fame, he awoke as he so often did as of late, in chains, bound at the wrists and ankles by tight, circulation-cutting cuffs that, while metallic in texture, more closely resembled something ethereal in appearance. The sight confounded him, made his mind spin on an axis that even he struggled to fully comprehend. As if his bindings glowed as bright as the sun, but gave off no light whatsoever. Both simultaneously, and also neither at all. And if that sounded like an earful, imagine how Rah'dny felt waking up covered in the stuff. Stuff that the magically inept warrior could only describe as stuff. The kind of stuff that a mere passing glance of would be enough to send a sane man spiraling into madness and or make a madman sane. And glance upon them he did, before violently recoiling from that which he failed to understand, before averting his gaze with a sharp, involuntary jerk of his neck, cracking a decent amount of vertebrae with emotion before slamming the back of his head against something rock hard. He tried to scream, to wail in pain from his head's impact with solid stone, but discovered very quickly that that was an impossibility in his battered and broken state. Because as he opened his mouth wide, as he took a deep breath in preparation of the mighty shout he was ready to unleash upon whoever the fuck was close enough to hear, he felt for the first time just how broken his ribs were, how broken he was. Felt his lungs puncture in spots, as what little air he had inhaled was forced right back out of him, and not in the riotous, prideful war cry he wished to let loose, but instead in a sad, impotent wheeze. So he instead bore his teeth and winced, trying his dangdest to keep his breaths as shallow as possible, to keep his focus away from those mind-boggling constraints, to keep his rage under wraps, and to think of a way out of this nightmare he had awoken to. Rah'dny sat up as best he could manage in his current state, propping his back up against the cold granite of the wall behind him, as he allowed his eyes to adjust to the darkness of the chamber where he now found himself. That dim, dank, and dark cave with its rocky, shit-brown granite walls, with its bountiful assortment of stalactites and stalagmites, with that faint hint of a cool breeze tickling the warrior's full, bushy beard, blowing in from his left, from where he could now guess with reasonable confidence to be where his exit lay. And so he gritted his teeth in anticipation of the pain that would come with him crawling madly in that direction, kicking and groaning for each inch of progress,
fighting back the creeping madness that would rear its ugly head every time those god-awful cuffs entered his line of sight.
Luckily for you, my king, none of that is going to be necessary.
The voice echoed off the chamber's sheer granite walls and obliterated Rah'dny's premonitions of escape. As the warrior craned his neck to the right and caught sight of that small, multicolored ball of arcane light emerging from deeper in the cave.
Who?
He shook his head, braced his midsection, and tried again, this time with a tad bit more power in his words.
Who goes there? The guy who saved your ass from torrential acid rains, you sorry son of a lich.
A thin, knobby-looking figure shuffled out from the darkness that had shrouded his presence thus far, emerged from deeper in the cave with that gnarled, ancient wooden staff in hand. The one with the smoky, opalescent glowing orb nestled atop it, an orb that resembled one of those glowing LED balls with how it gave off its light. And as that wrinkled old man hobbled into Rah'dny's field of vision, the warrior took note of that pointy teal wizard hat, the one with the sun and moon patterning embroidered upon it, the telltale sign of wizardry that sat atop those thin, frizzy whiffs of snow white he called a hairdo.
The voices in my head foretold me of your arrival to this place, to where the rains can kill the undead with the same proficiency as the living. Had I not gotten to you when I did, well...
The crash of thunder suddenly echoed through the craggy granite chamber for added effect. For just outside, acid rain pounded onto the barren, lifeless earth of the northeastern Badlands so hard and so fast that it sounded just like the opening to Hot for Teacher.
Let's just say it would have been a really dumb way for you to go out. Now tell me, why the heckaroni and cheese have you come out here to bumfuck nowhere? Pshaw the threequel, old man. I don't need to tell you jack shit. And you know, if I wasn't all banged up right now, I think I'd kick your fucking ass. You poor, delirious fool. You have no idea who stands before you, do you not?
The wizard stepped fully into the light as he continued.
I am Azataz the Wise, a.k.a. the Wiz with the Biz, a.k.a. the Dopefini Bobini, a.k.a. your judge, jury, and executioner.
Azataz paced back and forth in front of his captive as he spoke, as he diddled his fingers in the air and shot off a few magic missiles just as a flex.
I know I may not look it, but I can and will cast you down to even lower than you're at already. I will owl express your ass straight to Skullcap Castle and let her deal with you when I get bored. Then I'll laugh as you spend eternity plumbing ever further still, to depths of despair and misery you couldn't possibly begin to describe with your mortal tongue alone.
Rah'dny's heart sank as his balls shot up, and he could almost feel them collide somewhere in his lower intestine as the wizard proceeded.
Or, option B, I provide you with food, drink, some fresh clothes, mend your wounds, and you go merrily on your way. In exchange for a teensy little favor for me.
Now, Rah'dny was by no means a trusting man. After more than enough secondhand experience with magic, he knew it best to avoid the stuff entirely if he could help it. But that didn't mean he was fucking stupid. In fact, he now thought long and hard, setting the inner mechanicians of his splintered mind to overdrive as he and that wizard locked eyes for an uncomfortably long amount of time. He knew full well that he was backed against a corner, caught between a rock, a hard place, a conniving old spellcaster, and some man-eating rain. And even if he played like it wasn't so, he knew that he was in dire need of this wizard's assistance. Knew that whatever sick, twisted errand this old fool could possibly conjure up in that magic-blasted maelstrom of a mind, whatever it was, it couldn't possibly hold a candle to option A. He knew, whether he liked it or not, he had been sloppy, hadn't covered his tracks, and would have probably been dead already had he not been rescue napped by this grimacing old man. But he also knew that owing a wizard a favor, owing one of those deceitful magic users anything, can and will spell one's doom 9 times out of 10. So he broke the silence that had since grown stagnant in the stale cavern air between them, with a cautious, yet stern line of questioning of his own.
What kind of favor? It's actually rather simple,
he said as he pulled a small plastic baggie of magic shrooms from his sleeve, as he plucked one out and held it all up in Rah'dny's grill.
All I need is for you to eat this.
Remembering his previous stint with that awful substance, a large overdose of which had once sent him stumbling and mumbling through a lifetime of madness, through 4 dimensions of space-time. He recoiled and spasmed, moving his chompers as far as he could manage, getting his face the fuck away from that blackened, dried little mushroom at all costs.
You truly and honestly expect me to subject myself to that place beyond places? I can't. I won't. Not again. Never again. Do you understand me? No fucking dice.
He rolled to the side in spite of the great pain it caused him, as the wizard dashed into Rah'dny's new field of vision and spoke.
Need I remind you that you escaped from an Empire-run super arena? You mean that place with the tubes and lions and shit? What about it? That place is run by Skelemen. Her Skelemen. AKA, after you went missing, none other than the Lich Queen herself commissioned one heck of a bounty for your life. Yeah, and that's why I came here. AKA, the fuck out of Dodge. It's like you said before, wizard. The rain kills both undead and living folk without discrimination. That makes this the only place in Yerxland where her influence can never take root. So I came here to regroup, to see what supplies I could scrounge up from those acid-blasted shacks out there before beginning my quest to reclaim the BFS as my own.
I'm sorry, what? BFS?
My big fucking sword. The one I had once wielded against that lich all those lifetimes ago. The very same one I shall wield once more to end her eternal reign. Once and for all. For real this time.
Okay, that's cool and all, but we're starting to veer off track here, bud, and I do not have all day. So back to brass tacks. A certain wood elf is after your bounty, shirking her me-mandated trash-picking duties for a shot at 69,420 gold.
Shit, with a price that high, I'd be after me too.
She's a wizard in training, and though she only has like 2 or 3 low-level spells in her repertoire, she's lightning quick with a blade. Far too agile for your brawling human physique to outmaneuver. I'd say you've got a solid 26 seconds before she gets a good nut punch in on you, ties you up with a little bow on top, and has you dragging behind by the ankles as she escorts your limp and unconscious body straight to Skullcap Castle. You'll have to awaken your mind's eye if you wish to stand even the slightest chance of reading her graceful dance about the battlefield. If you wish to defend yourself against her insane dexterity. And to do that, I believe you know what I'm alluding to by holding this right up to your mouth, my king.
Rah'dny eyeballed that thing for a good long while, looked with eyes crossed down along the bridge of his pugilist nose, down to the shroom in that wizard's wrinkled old hand, up to the wizard's wrinkled old face, then back down to the shroom again.
I'm asking this not as a wily old wizard, but someone who has seen firsthand what the Lich Queen is capable of. Someone who was at Wizstock when shit hit the fan and saw for himself as you nearly did her in. Someone who knows that you will triumph should you two battle again. This magic shroom is your only hope if you wish to be victorious against the elf. If you wish to continue onwards in search of your sword. Nay, if you wish for me to heal you, prepare you for this upcoming bout to the best of my ability, instead of simply claiming all that reward money for myself.
The wizard's gross old man hand inched ever closer to the warrior's face as he spoke, close enough so that Rah'dny might take in the sight of that shroom in all of its vile, blackened and dried glory. He took a whiff of the stink lines emanating off of it, nearly gagged, then looked back up at the old man's eyes before bellowing his response.
You twisted little nugget of wizard shit! I'm in.
Azataz slid the shroom into Rah'dny's mouth without hesitation. The warrior nearly choked on it before remembering how to chew, and then was instantly greeted by a much kinder, much smaller version of Azataz clad in white that now sat on the original shoulders.
The effects of this smaller dosage shouldn't jar your psyche immediately. I'd say you have a few hours before you start seeing shit. But by then, you'll be well rested and ready to rumble. So heal up Eat up, rest up, and suit up, because that elf should be headed straight for you once.
Okay, bye!
Azataz snapped the warrior's attention back to reality as he abruptly turned and made to walk off, only to be stopped by the still injured, still tied and bound man lying helplessly on the ground.
Aren't you gonna unlock these chains now?
Without looking back, Azataz said slyly,
What chains? What do you mean, what chains? The goddamn ones around my—
Rah'd'ny glanced down at his hands for the first time throughout this entire exchange, and miraculously, those mind-boggling cuffs were no longer there, if they ever even were. So he moved his newly freed arms to his sides and directed his gaze back up to the retreating old man and that glowing magic staff of his. But the wizard was no longer there, gone without a trace. Save for the large silver platter with a whole roast chicken on it, with some rice and beans on the side, the large glass vial of red liquid with a big plus on the front, and the fresh set of leathers, now hanging from a stalactite with a coat hanger taped to it. All just materialized from thin air and a couple poofs of smoke. And so, he drank of the potion, allowed that brew to knit his shattered body back together, and ate his meal like a man going to the electric chair, loud, fast, and with his bare hands, for the wizard had not left utensils. However, about halfway through his feast, he remembered something very important.
Wait a second. Where's that lion I came here with?
There was no reply, for Rah'd'ny was alone in the cave. Thanks for tuning in to me screaming about wizards for a half hour. If you're still here, odds are that you enjoyed listening to it as much as I enjoyed reading it. So do me a solid and let me know what you thought of today's tale somewhere on the internet. Links to my Instagram and Twitter handles can be found conveniently in the episode description. And or leave a positive review on your podcasting platform of choice. If you haven't already, check out the previous episodes of the show and subscribe to the feed. That way, you'll be all caught up for next Monday's episode, which will, in fact, be the very best episode yet. And until then, bye-bye.